He crossed mountains, defeated monsters, challenged gods, and uncovered the greatest of all secrets. A demigod blessed with divine power yet burdened by mortal pain, Gilgamesh faced trials no mere mortal could endure. He stood against divine wrath, braved the edges of the world, and encountered Utnapishtim, the immortal chosen by the gods, seeking the answer to eternal life. Though denied immortality, his courage and deeds carved his name into eternity. This is the story of the first hero the world ever knew. This is the Epic of Gilgamesh, the movie. I will reveal to you a mystery. I will tell you a secret of the gods. In the ancient city of Uruk, there lived a man who had seen all things. His name was Gilgamesh. His deeds were vast, his wisdom unmatched, for he had witnessed the secrets of the world and uncovered the mysteries hidden from mortal eyes. To this day, we hear echoes of the story carved in stone and buried for thousands of years. Gilgamesh was not only a hero but a builder, raising the mighty walls of Uruk Haven and the sacred temple of Eanna, the holy sanctuary of Ishtar. These walls gleamed like copper under the sun, their foundations ancient, and their craftsmanship unequaled. Even the 7 sages themselves had laid out the plans for these walls, and no king or man had ever matched their splendor. Uruk was a city of marvels, 1 league in every direction, with palm gardens, lowlands, and the open expanse of the Ishtar temple, all enclosed by its towering walls. Hidden within these walls was a copper box, locked with a bronze seal. Inside, upon a tablet of lapis lazuli, was the tale of Gilgamesh and the hardships he had endured. Gilgamesh, supreme among kings, a lordly figure who towered over all, was born in Uruk. Like a wild bull, he charged ahead, leading his people with unmatched strength. His presence was felt by all, both protector and destroyer, capable of shattering even the most fortified walls. The blood of gods coursed through him, for he was 2/3 divine and only 1/3 human. He was the son of Lugalbanda and the great cow goddess Rimat Ninsun, a being forged to perfection by the great goddess Aruru. But despite his great deeds, not all was well in Uruk. The people grew restless under his rule. Gilgamesh was strong, too strong. He left no son to his father, no daughter to her mother. His power was unrelenting, his arrogance unchallenged. Day and night he roamed the streets, his strength unchecked, causing unrest among his people. The gods themselves heard the cries of the citizens, their voices carried to the heavens. Anu, the great god of Uruk, listened to the pleas. You have created a mighty wild bull, a being without rival, whose strength leaves none untouched. The gods turned to Aruru, the goddess who had shaped mankind. Create a being to match Gilgamesh's stormy heart, a force equal to him, so that the city of Uruk may know peace. Aruru heeded their call. Washing her hands, she took a handful of clay, and from that clay, she shaped a new being. In the wilderness, far from the walls of Uruk, she created Enkidu. Valiant and wild, Enkidu was born of silence, his strength a gift from Ninurta, the god of war. His body was covered in shaggy hair, his locks flowing like a river, untamed and untouched by civilization. He lived among the animals, running with the gazelles, drinking from the same watering holes as the beasts of the field. It was there, at the water's edge, that a trapper first laid eyes on him. For 3 days, the trapper encountered this wild man, and each time, fear struck him to his core. Enkidu was no ordinary man. His presence was overwhelming, his strength unlike any creature the trapper had ever seen. Rigid with terror, the trapper fled, his heart pounding and his face pale as if he had gazed upon a nightmare come to life. The trapper, overwhelmed by fear, sought out his father. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Father, a man has come down from the mountains. He is like no other I have seen, his strength as mighty as the meteorite of Anu. Day after day, he roams over the mountains, jostling with the wild animals at the watering hole. He plants his feet there, unwavering, blocking my way. I dared not approach him. He filled the pits I had dug, tore apart my traps, and released the wild beasts from my grasp. He does not allow me to carry out my work in the wilderness." The trapper's father, wise in years, responded calmly. "My son, in Uruk there lives a man named Gilgamesh. No one is stronger than he, for his might rivals even that of the meteorite of Anu. Go now, travel to Uruk and tell Gilgamesh of this wild man. He will know what to do. Gilgamesh will give you the harlot Shamhat. Take her with you. She will subdue the wild man, for her power is great." When the animals gather to drink at the watering hole, have her reveal herself to him. When he sees her, he will approach, and the wild beasts he calls his kin will abandon him. Heeding his father's advice, the trapper set off on his journey to Uruk. Upon arriving in the great city, he stood before Gilgamesh and told him of the wild man. "A certain fellow has come from the mountains, O king. He is the mightiest in the land, his strength as mighty as the meteorite of Anu. Every day, he roams the mountains and drinks with the animals at the watering hole. I was afraid to approach him. He destroys my traps and releases the animals I catch. He makes it impossible for me to work in the wilderness." Gilgamesh, calm and assured, gave his command. "Go, trapper. Take the harlot Shamhat with you. When the animals gather at the watering hole, have her expose herself to the wild man. When he sees her, he will come close, and the animals he has known will flee from him." The trapper obeyed. He and Shamhat set off, traveling for 3 days until they reached the watering hole where the wild man, Enkidu, often came. For 2 days they watched as the wild beasts arrived to drink, their thirst quenched by the cool waters. Then, on the 3rd day, Enkidu appeared, his wild form moving with the gazelles, his thirst slaked alongside the animals. When Shamhat saw him, she marveled at his untamed nature. "That is him, Shamhat," the trapper whispered. "Now, release your arms, expose your beauty. Do not hold back, for he will be drawn to you." Shamhat unclasped her robe, letting it fall, and revealed her beauty to the wild man. Enkidu, seeing her for the first time, was captivated. He approached, unable to resist. She did not hold back but took his energy, drawing him close. For 6 days and 7 nights, Enkidu lay with Shamhat, lost in her charms. But when he finally turned his attention back to the animals, they fled from him. The gazelles darted away, and the wild beasts distanced themselves, no longer recognizing him as one of their own. Enkidu felt a change in himself. His body, once strong and wild, now felt diminished. His knees, which had once carried him with the animals, became stiff, and his strength, once unmatched, faltered. But in that moment, his understanding grew. He sat at Shamhat's feet, gazing up at her with new eyes. She spoke softly. "You are beautiful, Enkidu, like a god. Why do you run with the beasts when you could walk with men? Come, I will take you to Uruk, to the sacred temple of Anu and Ishtar, the place where Gilgamesh, the great king, dwells. He is wise and powerful, but he struts before the people like a wild bull. You should meet him, for you are now more like him than the animals of the wild." Enkidu listened, and her words found favor with him. He rose, aware of his transformation. "Take me to this Gilgamesh," he said. "I will challenge him. Let me shout to the people of Uruk that I am their equal. I was born in the wilderness, and I will change the order of things in the city." Shamhat smiled. "Come, I will lead you to him. I know where to find Gilgamesh." Look around you, Enkidu. In Uruk, the people dress in fine garments. They celebrate festivals every day, and music fills the air. The women are beautiful, and laughter abounds in the streets. Gilgamesh, a man of great strength and passion, walks among them. He is handsome and full of life, mightier than any man. She continued, "It is not just his strength you must contend with, Enkidu. Gilgamesh is wise beyond measure, for Anu, Enlil, and Enki have granted him unmatched wisdom. Even before you left the mountains, Gilgamesh had dreams of you." In the heart of Uruk, where the stars seemed to hang closer to the earth, Gilgamesh awoke from a night laden with strange visions. With the first light of dawn, he rose and sought out his mother, Ninsun, the wise, the all-knowing. His voice, heavy with the weight of the dream, echoed in the quiet. "Mother," he began, "last night I had a dream. Stars from the heavens appeared, and with them a mighty meteorite from Anu fell beside me. I tried to lift it, but it was too powerful, too great. I strained to turn it over, yet I could not move it. And there, gathered around, stood the people of Uruk. The whole land assembled, throngs of men clustering around it. They kissed its feet, treating it as if it were a precious child. I too felt drawn to it, embracing it like a wife. I laid it at your feet, and you made it compete with me." Ninsun, her wisdom unfathomable, listened carefully to her son's words. Her eyes gleamed with understanding as she spoke. "My son, the stars that appeared, and the meteorite of Anu that fell beside you, they are signs of a coming event. You tried to lift it, but it was too mighty. You could not move it, for it is a force beyond you. You laid it at my feet, and I made it compete with you. The meaning is clear. A mighty man is destined to come into your life, a comrade, one who will save you. He is the strongest in the land, as mighty as the meteorite of Anu. You will love him, and he will be your equal. Your dream, my son, is good and full of promise." Yet Gilgamesh was troubled still, for another dream had visited him that same night. He spoke again. "Mother, I had another dream. This time, at the gate of my chamber, there lay an axe. The people of Uruk had gathered around it, the entire land standing in awe. I too was drawn to it, embracing it as a wife. I laid it at your feet, and once again, you made it compete with me." Ninsun, wise beyond measure, smiled gently at her son's uncertainty. "The axe you saw," she said, "is no mere object. It is a man. Just as in your first dream, you loved and embraced it as if it were your equal, and I set it to compete with you. A mighty man will come, a comrade who will save his friend. He is the strongest in the land, as powerful as the meteorite of Anu. This man will stand beside you, my son, and together you will accomplish great deeds." Gilgamesh, feeling the weight of the dreams lift from his chest, spoke with newfound determination. "By the command of Enlil, the great counselor, may it come to pass. Let me have this friend and advisor, this comrade who will stand with me. You have interpreted my dreams, and now I know he is coming." Meanwhile, far from the city walls, Shamhat, the harlot, had spoken of these dreams to Enkidu. Enkidu, whose heart was beginning to awaken to the world of men, listened as Shamhat recounted the visions of Gilgamesh, and in that moment, the fate of the wild man and the king became intertwined, as destiny wove its threads tightly around them. Enkidu sat before Shamhat, his transformation evident in every aspect of his being. A man caught between the untamed wilderness of his origins and the complexities of a world he had only just begun to encounter, he appeared lost in thought, unsure of the journey ahead. Shamhat, sensing his inner turmoil, removed her clothing, offering him a portion while keeping another for herself. With a gentle yet divine grace, she took Enkidu's hand in hers and guided him toward the shepherd's dwelling, bridging the gap between his past and the life awaiting him. When the shepherds saw him, they were struck by his resemblance to the mighty Gilgamesh, tall, strong, with a presence that loomed like the battlements of Uruk itself. He must have been born in the mountains, they murmured among themselves, for his strength rivals the meteorite of Anu. The shepherds placed food before Enkidu, food he had never tasted, and beer he had never known. Shamhat, ever the guide, spoke softly to him. "Eat the food, Enkidu. This is how one lives in the land of men. Drink the beer, for it is the custom here." Enkidu, trusting her words, ate the bread until his hunger was sated and drank 7 jugs of beer. As he drank, a warmth spread through his body, his spirit grew light, and soon he sang with joy. His face shone with the glow of this new experience. Enkidu washed himself in the water, scrubbing away the wilderness that clung to his body. He anointed his skin with oil, turning from a creature of the wild into something resembling a man. He donned new clothing and stood tall like a warrior, ready to defend those around him. With a new sense of purpose, he took up weapons and chased away the lions and wolves, ensuring the safety of the shepherds and their flocks. No longer did they fear the night, for Enkidu stood guard, strong and vigilant, twice the size of ordinary men. But even as he settled into this new life, Enkidu's destiny loomed ahead. One day, as he raised his eyes, he spotted a man in the distance. His voice thick with suspicion, he turned to Shamhat. "Who is that man? Why does he come here? I shall call out his name." Shamhat approached the stranger and asked, "Young man, where are you going in such haste? Why do you travel with such urgency?" The man answered, "I am on my way to a wedding. It is the custom here. The people have prepared a feast heaped with delights, and for the king of Uruk, Gilgamesh, the veil of the bride is lifted. It is his right to lay with the bride first, before the husband. This is the decree of Anu, destined for him from the moment of his birth." At these words, a fury ignited within Enkidu. His face flushed with anger, and his heart beat like a war drum. He turned to Shamhat, and without hesitation, he began his journey to Uruk. Together, they made their way to the great city, and as Enkidu walked through the streets, the people of Uruk gathered in awe. His presence alone commanded attention. The men thronged around him, marveling at the sight of this towering figure. They kissed his feet, as if he were a god reborn, their voices a murmur of wonder. But Enkidu had one purpose in mind. He stood before the entrance to the marital chamber, where the bed for Gilgamesh had been prepared. For Gilgamesh, who was as revered as a god, a counterpart had been set. Yet Enkidu blocked his way, refusing him entry. The people of Uruk watched as the two titans met, not with words, but with strength. They grappled at the entrance, their mighty forms colliding with the force of a storm. In the streets they battled, their strength shaking the very walls of Uruk. The ground trembled beneath their feet, the doorposts rattled, and the people held their breath as the two warriors clashed. Amidst their struggle, Gilgamesh bent his knee, his anger dissipating as he withdrew, turning his chest away from his foe. Enkidu too slowed, his rage subsiding. He looked at Gilgamesh, and in that moment, respect replaced fury. "Your mother bore you unique," Enkidu said, his voice steady. "Ninsun, the wild cow of the enclosure, made you a man like no other. Your head rises above all men, for Enlil himself has destined you to be king over the people." As Gilgamesh and Enkidu stood together, their once opposing spirits now bound by the trials they had faced, a deep bond formed between them. With a mutual respect that transcended their earlier struggle, they embraced each other, sealing their friendship. Enkidu, once wild and unbridled, had found in Gilgamesh a brother of equal strength, and the two stood as companions, destined to face the challenges of both the mortal and divine realms together. Word spread quickly throughout the land of Uruk. The people marveled at the strength of these two mighty figures, comparing their power to that of Anu's meteorite, a force beyond comprehension. Thus, like two complementary forces, rumors arose that Gilgamesh and Enkidu were planning to journey to the cedar forest. Reports spread throughout the city that a terrible threat was lurking in the cedar forest. In the halls of the palace, Rimat Ninsun, the wise mother of Gilgamesh, prayed to the gods for her son and his new companion. Her voice rose in supplication, pleading with Shamash, the sun god, to watch over Enkidu, for he had no parents to guide or protect him. "Enkidu, born of the wilderness, raised by no one, who will care for him?" she lamented. Her words reached Enkidu's ears, and for the first time, he felt the weight of his past. His heart grew heavy, and tears welled up in his eyes, his strength momentarily faltering. But Gilgamesh was there, and the two clasped hands, their bond growing stronger. Enkidu, wiping away his tears, spoke solemnly to Gilgamesh. He warned him of the great terror that awaited anyone who dared enter the cedar forest. Enlil, the god of the earth, has placed a guardian there, Humbaba, whose roar is as destructive as a flood, whose mouth spews fire, and whose very breath is death. He can hear even the slightest rustle in his forest from 100 leagues away. No man who enters can escape the paralysis of fear that strikes upon seeing him. But Gilgamesh, undeterred by the danger, looked to his friend with resolve. "Do not fear death, my friend. Only the gods can dwell forever with Shamash in the heavens. For us, mortals, our days are numbered. What we achieve is like the wind, fleeting. But if I am to fall, let it be in battle, for I will have secured my fame. It will be said, Gilgamesh, the mighty king, battled Humbaba the terrible. You, who were born and raised in the wilderness, have faced lions and survived. You know strength, and together we will achieve eternal glory." "Let us go to the forge," Gilgamesh declared, "and have them craft our weapons." Hand in hand, they went to the craftsmen of Uruk, who began to forge mighty weapons for the coming battle. The craftsmen discussed among themselves, deciding to make axes, swords, and armor of tremendous weight and strength, each item fashioned to carry the might of the two heroes. Gilgamesh stood before the men of Uruk, his voice filled with determination. "Listen to me, men of Uruk. I seek to make myself mightier, and to do so, I will undertake a distant journey. I will face battles I have never known and travel a road I have never walked before. Give me your blessings, for I will perform the New Year's festival when I return." But Enkidu, knowing the dangers that lay ahead, turned to the elders of Uruk. "This journey is not to be made," he warned. "Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest, is a terror unlike any other. His roar is a flood, his mouth is fire, and his breath brings death. No man should face such a creature." The noble counselors of Uruk rose and echoed Enkidu's caution. "You are young, Gilgamesh. Your heart leads you astray. Humbaba is no mere foe. He is a terror to all who enter his forest. Even the gods tremble before him. Enlil placed him there to guard the cedar forest from human hands. Consider this well before you act. The elders of Uruk, wise and seasoned, spoke to Gilgamesh with caution in their voices, urging him not to rely solely on his immense strength. Gilgamesh, do not place all your trust in your great power, they advised. Keep your eyes sharp and make every strike count. Remember, the one who goes ahead saves the comrade, and the one who knows the road protects his friend. Let Enkidu lead, for he knows the path to the cedar forest. He has fought battles. He understands the dangers that lie ahead. Enkidu will protect you and keep both of you safe on this perilous journey. The elders then turned to Enkidu, entrusting Gilgamesh into his care. In our assembly, we have entrusted the king to you, Enkidu, and when you return, you must bring him back to us safely. With the advice of the elders ringing in their ears, Gilgamesh turned to his friend. Come, my friend, let us go to the temple of Egelma, to Ninsun, the great queen. She is wise and all-knowing. She will help guide our path. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu walked hand in hand to the great palace, to Ninsun. Gilgamesh approached his mother, his heart heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. Ninsun, though I am strong, stronger than most, I must now travel a great distance to face the terror of Humbaba. I will fight battles unlike any I have known and tread a road unfamiliar to me. Until I return, until I reach the cedar forest and kill Humbaba, who has brought such baneful terror to the land, I ask that you intercede with Shamash on my behalf. If I succeed and cut down the cedar, let the whole land rejoice, and I will erect a monument of our victory before you. Ninsun, the wise and loving mother, heard her son's words with a heart full of sorrow. She withdrew into her chambers, grief etched across her face. In the solitude of her quarters, she washed herself with sacred purity plants, adorned herself with fine robes, placed jewels upon her chest, and wore her crown with dignity. She took a bowl of water, sprinkling it upon the ground, and ascended to the roof, where she could reach the heavens in prayer. There, before the god Shamash, she set burning incense, the fragrant smoke rising toward the sky. With arms outstretched, she cried out, Shamash, why have you given my son such a restless heart? Why have you touched him so that he now wishes to journey to the distant cedar forest to face Humbaba in battle? He knows not the road nor the dangers ahead. Until he returns from his quest, protect him. When you see him on the path, may Aja, your bride, remind you of him without fear. Command the watchmen of the night, the stars, and even your father, Sin, to keep watch over him. Having spoken her prayers, Ninsun called Enkidu to her. Though he was not her child by blood, she now spoke to him as if he were. Enkidu, you are not of my womb, but today I speak to you as I would to one of my own, alongside the sacred votaries of Gilgamesh, the high priestesses, the holy women of the temple. She placed a pendant around his neck, a symbol of her protection and guidance, as the temple priestesses gathered around them. I have entrusted you with my son, Enkidu. Until you return, whether it be a month or a year, I entrust him into your care. You must bring him back safely. With this, the journey was sealed. Gilgamesh and Enkidu, now blessed by Ninsun and the sacred women of the temple, prepared to embark on their fateful journey to the cedar forest. The gate of cedar awaited them, and with it, the looming presence of Humbaba, the terror assigned by Enlil to guard the sacred forest. As Gilgamesh and Enkidu pressed forward on their perilous journey, they covered great distances with determination. At 20 leagues, they paused briefly to take food, their resolve still strong. By 30 leagues, they stopped for the night, their bodies weary, but their spirits unbroken. In a single day, they walked 50 leagues, a journey that would normally take a month and a half. On the third day, the towering cedars of Lebanon came into view. They dug a well facing the sun, calling upon Shamash, the god of justice and light. Gilgamesh, ever bold, climbed a mountain peak, gazing out over the vast expanse before him. He offered flour as a libation, raising his voice to the heavens. "Mountain, grant me a dream," he called out, a favorable message from Shamash. Enkidu, ever the faithful companion, prepared a place for Gilgamesh to rest. A violent wind swept through the mountains, so Enkidu fastened a covering to protect them from the storm. He arranged their camp carefully, making a circle around them as if to guard their sleep from any harm. As Gilgamesh sat, resting his chin on his knees, sleep crept over him like a heavy mist, enveloping him in the weariness that overtakes all men. But in the depths of the night, his slumber was disturbed. He awoke suddenly, shaking off the grip of a dream, and turned to Enkidu with confusion and unease in his voice. "My friend," Gilgamesh said, his voice tense, "did you call out to me? Why did I wake? Did you touch me? Why do I feel so unsettled? Did a god pass by us? Why are my muscles trembling like this?" He paused, then continued, his voice heavy with the weight of the dream. "Enkidu, my friend, I had a dream, and it disturbed me deeply. In the gorges of the mountain, I saw the mountain fall upon us. Everything seemed to crumble, and we were trapped beneath it, like flies caught in a web. What does this mean?" Enkidu, wise and calm, listened to Gilgamesh's words and interpreted the vision for his anxious friend. "My friend, do not be troubled. The dream you had is a good omen, a sign of victory. The mountain you saw collapsing is none other than Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest. This means we will conquer him, we will capture and kill him, and cast his body into the wasteland. In the morning, Shamash will send us a favorable message." Still, Gilgamesh could not shake the tension of the night. As they continued on their journey, covering another 50 leagues, Gilgamesh again sought guidance from the divine. Once more, he ascended a mountain peak, offered flour to the gods, and called for a dream. A message from Shamash to guide their path. That night, Enkidu made a place for them to rest, once again shielding them from the winds that howled through the mountains. Gilgamesh fell into a deep sleep, yet his dreams would not leave him in peace. In the dead of night, he awoke, troubled once more. He turned to Enkidu, his voice filled with apprehension. "My friend, I have had another dream, a second vision, even more disturbing than the first." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "In this dream, I was grappling with a wild bull from the wilderness. Its bellow was so loud that it split the earth, sending dust swirling into the sky. I was driven to my knees before it, trapped in its power. It wrapped something around my arm, and I felt my strength drain away. My temples throbbed, and I could barely speak. Then, as if by mercy, it gave me water from its own water skin." Enkidu, wise in interpreting dreams, sought to calm his friend. "Gilgamesh, do not be afraid. The god to whom we go is not the wild bull you saw in your dream. That bull is Shamash, our protector, who holds our hand in times of difficulty. The one who gave you water from his water skin is your personal god, Lugalbanda, who brings you honor. This dream is a good sign. Together, we must face this challenge, something no one has done before. We will accomplish a great deed." Still, their journey pressed on. At 20 leagues, they stopped for food. At 30 leagues, they rested for the night. 50 leagues they walked in one day, a trek that would take others a month and a half. Again, they dug a well facing the sun, and once more, Gilgamesh climbed a mountain peak. Offering flour in libation, he called out, "Mountain, bring me a dream, a favorable message from Shamash." Enkidu prepared their camp for the night, shielding them from the wind with a covering. As Gilgamesh rested, sleep overtook him once more, pouring over him as it does for all of mankind. But again, in the depths of the night, his sleep was disturbed. He awoke suddenly, troubled and tense, and turned to Enkidu. "My friend," Gilgamesh said, his voice filled with dread, "did you call out to me? Why did I wake so suddenly? Did a god pass by? My muscles are trembling and I feel a great disturbance." "Enkidu, I have had a third dream and it fills me with fear." He described the terrifying vision. "In my dream, the heavens roared and the earth rumbled beneath me. Then there was a deadly stillness and everything was cloaked in darkness. A bolt of lightning cracked through the sky, setting a fire that spread, thickening into a deadly storm. Death rained down around me, but then, just as suddenly, the white-hot flames dimmed and the fire went out, leaving nothing but ash." Gilgamesh's voice faltered. "What does this mean, my friend? We must go down into the plain and talk this over." At 20 leagues, they paused for food, their endurance pushing them forward. At 30 leagues, they rested, setting camp for the night. The 50 leagues they covered in a single day were the distance of a journey meant for a month and a half, yet their determination carried them through. Facing the sun, they dug a well, and once more, Gilgamesh climbed to the peak of a mountain. As he reached the summit, he offered flour as a libation and called out to the mountain, "Mountain, bring me a dream, a favorable message from Shamash." Enkidu, ever vigilant, prepared a place for them to sleep. A violent wind tore through the night, so he fastened a covering to shield them from its fury. They rested like grains scattered by the wind, huddled in the stillness of the mountains. Gilgamesh, sitting with his chin resting on his knees, succumbed to the sleep that overtakes all of mankind. In the dead of night, his sleep came to an abrupt end. He stirred, troubled, and turned to his faithful friend. "Enkidu, my friend, did you call out to me? Why have I awakened? Did you touch me? Why am I so disturbed? Did a god pass by? Why are my muscles trembling?" Gilgamesh, shaken, revealed to Enkidu, "My friend, I have had a fourth dream, and it fills me with fear. The dream was deeply disturbing, though much of it is unclear to me." Enkidu listened, sensing the gravity of the dream. "The dream you had is favorable," he reassured Gilgamesh. "This dream holds importance. Humbaba, the great terror of the cedar forest, is near. But fear not, we will prevail. By morning, a favorable message will come from Shamash. We will defeat him, and victory will be ours." Again, they traveled on. At 20 leagues, they took food. At 30 leagues, they stopped for the night. The grueling pace of 50 leagues in a day pushed them closer to their goal. Each night, the same ritual unfolded. Gilgamesh would offer a libation on the mountain, and Enkidu would prepare their resting place. Yet, night after night, Gilgamesh's sleep was broken by unsettling dreams. He awoke once more, disturbed and confused, and called out to his friend, "Enkidu, my friend, I have had a fifth dream. It was as deeply unsettling as the others. The heavens roared and the earth rumbled beneath me. Then silence fell, and darkness loomed over everything. A bolt of lightning cracked the sky, and a fire broke out. Flames grew thicker, and death rained down from above. But then, just as quickly, the fire dimmed, and everything turned to ash." Tears welled in Gilgamesh's eyes, and in his distress, he called out to Shamash, "What you said in Uruk, be mindful of it now. Stand by me in this time of need." Shamash, hearing the cries of Gilgamesh, responded from the heavens. A warning resounded through the sky. "Hurry, stand by him, for Humbaba approaches. He has not yet donned his 7 coats of armor. Only one remains on him. Now is your time." As the message reached them, Gilgamesh and Enkidu knew that the moment of confrontation was near. Together, they lunged forward like raging wild bulls, their spirits united in a shared fury. Humbaba, the guardian of the forest, roared back, his voice echoing like thunder through the trees. The ground beneath them trembled with the force of the impending battle. Amid the tension, Enkidu spoke words of wisdom to his friend. "One alone cannot prevail, but together we will. A slippery path is not feared by 2 who help each other. A 3-ply rope cannot be easily severed, and the strength of 2 is greater than 1. With resolve building, Gilgamesh urged Enkidu, "As soon as we enter the cedar forest, let us split open the trees and strip them of their branches." "My friend, why do we hesitate? We have crossed mountains and faced danger together, and yet now we tremble before what lies ahead. You are experienced in battle, and together we have nothing to fear. Let your voice ring out like the sound of a kettle drum. Cast aside your doubt and fear. Take my hand and let us go forward as one. Do not fear death, for in battle we will find our glory. The one who walks ahead protects his comrade, and together we will establish our fame for eternity." At last, they reached the evergreen forest, the cedar forest that Humbaba guarded so fiercely. There, standing in the shadow of the towering trees, the 2 heroes cut off their talk, knowing that the battle ahead would define their fates. They stood at the edge of the forest, their eyes fixed on the towering cedar tree and the entrance before them. It was the threshold of the cedar mountain, the dwelling of the gods. The lush cedar foliage covered the mountain's face, casting a pleasant shade. Thorn bushes matted the ground, forming a dense thicket among the cedars and boxwood. The forest was encircled by a ravine that spanned 2 leagues and extended further for 2/3 of that distance. Suddenly, the scene shifted to the sound of swords being drawn. The sheaths were discarded, axes prepared, and the air filled with the sharpness of metal. Alone in the midst of the sacred forest, they were now face to face with Humbaba, the fearsome guardian. Humbaba's voice resonated as he addressed Gilgamesh. Enkidu, defiant, responded to Humbaba, "Humbaba, remember, one alone cannot prevail. Strangers, a slippery path is not feared by 2 people who help each other. A 3-ply rope cannot be cut. The mighty lion, 2 cubs can roll him over." Humbaba, however, turned to Gilgamesh with mocking disdain. "An idiot and a moron should give advice to each other, but you, Gilgamesh, why have you come to me? And you, Enkidu, son of a fish, who knows not his own father, advising turtles large and small who cannot suckle at their mother's breast. When you were young I saw you, but I did not approach you. Now you bring Gilgamesh before me, standing here as an enemy, a stranger. I would feed your flesh to the screeching vultures, the eagles and the vultures again." Gilgamesh, shaken by the monstrous guardian, turned to Enkidu. "My friend, Humbaba's face keeps changing." Enkidu urged Gilgamesh to act bravely. "Why, my friend, do you whimper so pitiably, hiding behind fear? Now is the time to act. Strike harder. Do not retreat or turn away. This is the moment to send the flood, to crack the whip of courage." The ground beneath them trembled violently as their feet pressed against the earth. They moved in circles as the battle unfolded, shaking Mount Hermon and Lebanon to their core. The white clouds above darkened, and the air became thick, as if death itself rained down like a suffocating fog. In response, Shamash raised mighty tempests against Humbaba, The south wind, north wind, east wind, west wind, whistling wind, piercing wind, blizzard, bad wind, wind of Simuru, demon wind, ice wind, storm, and sandstorm. 13 winds surged around Humbaba, covering his face and blinding him. Unable to move forward or escape, Humbaba was trapped, leaving him vulnerable to Gilgamesh's weapons. Humbaba, sensing his impending defeat, pleaded desperately for his life. His voice, once filled with menace, now held a tone of desperation as he addressed Gilgamesh. "You are still young, Gilgamesh," he said. "Your mother, Rimat Ninsun, gave birth to you. It was Shamash, Lord of the Mountain, who roused you to this expedition. O scion of Uruk's heart, King Gilgamesh, spare me and I will serve you. Let me dwell with you as your servant. As many trees as you command I will cut down for you. I will guard the finest myrtle wood for your palace." Enkidu, standing firm by Gilgamesh's side, quickly intervened. "My friend, do not listen to Humbaba," he urged. The guardian of the cedar forest, sensing that Enkidu's words swayed Gilgamesh, attempted to shift Enkidu's resolve. "Enkidu, you know the rules of my forest," Humbaba said. "You understand all that has been ordered by Enlil. I should have killed you at the entrance to the forest and fed your flesh to the screeching vultures. But now, mercy is in your hands. Tell Gilgamesh to spare my life." Enkidu, unyielding, turned to Gilgamesh and urged him once more. "My friend, Humbaba, guardian of the cedar forest, must be destroyed. Grind him down, kill him, pulverize him. If we delay, Enlil and the gods will fill with rage against us. Enlil resides in Nippur, and Shamash is in Sippar. We must act swiftly and erect an eternal monument that proclaims how Gilgamesh defeated Humbaba." Realizing that his words were futile, Humbaba shifted to a final curse, wishing misfortune upon Enkidu. "May he not live longer than Gilgamesh. May Enkidu not have more than his friend in life." Enkidu, angered by Humbaba's curse, chastised Gilgamesh. "My friend, I have been speaking to you, but you have not been listening. You have let Humbaba's curse sway your heart." Ignoring Humbaba's pleas, Gilgamesh and Enkidu moved in for the kill. Together, they struck him down, pulling out his insides, including his tongue, to ensure his defeat. As Humbaba fell, an abundance of cedar resin spilled over the mountain, its scent filling the air. The two heroes then set to work, cutting through the towering cedar, whose top scraped the sky. Gilgamesh and Enkidu marveled at the great tree, now felled by their hands. Enkidu proposed to craft a grand door from the wood, measuring 72 cubits high, 24 cubits wide, and 1 cubit thick, with its pivots made of a single piece. "Let it be carried to Nippur," Enkidu said. "The Euphrates will guide it, and Nippur will rejoice." They constructed a raft, binding it together securely. Enkidu steered the raft, while Gilgamesh held Humbaba's severed head, a trophy of their victory. The two heroes, having completed their fateful task, prepared to return to Uruk, carrying both the cedar and the legacy of their monumental battle with Humbaba. After their victorious return from the cedar forest, Gilgamesh washed away the dirt and grime of battle, cleansing his marred hair and refreshing his appearance. He shook out his long locks, letting them fall over his back. Throwing off his dirty garments, he dressed in clean, regal attire, wrapping himself in royal clothing and fastening a sash around his waist. Placing his crown on his head, Gilgamesh stood resplendent, his beauty and strength evident to all. The goddess Ishtar, the princess of love and war, was captivated by Gilgamesh's regal appearance. She raised her eyes to him and was struck by his charm. With longing, she approached him and spoke, "Come, Gilgamesh, be my husband and grant me your love. Be my husband, and I shall be your wife. I will prepare for you a chariot adorned with lapis lazuli and gold. its wheels crafted of gold and horns of electrum. It will be pulled by mighty storming mules from the mountains. Enter my house, filled with the fragrance of cedar, where the doorpost and throne dais will bow before your feet. Kings, lords, and princes will kneel beneath you. The people of Lulubu will bring you the bounty of mountains and fields as tribute. Your flocks will flourish, your goats bearing triplets and your ewes twins. Your donkeys will overtake mules, your steeds will be eager to gallop, and your axe will be unmatched at the yoke. However, Gilgamesh, unyielding to her advances, responded sharply to Ishtar's proposal. What would I gain by marrying you? What could I possibly offer you that you do not already possess? Do you need oil or garments, or lack food or drink? I could offer you divine food and kingly wine, but you are as unreliable as an oven that melts ice or a door that fails to block the wind. You are like a palace that crushes its own warriors, an elephant that devours its own covering, or pitch that blackens its bearer's hands. You are like a water skin that soaks through, a limestone that buckles the wall, or a shoe that bites its wearer. Gilgamesh continued, listing Ishtar's past lovers and the fates they suffered at her hands. Where are your eternal husbands, Ishtar? Where is your little shepherd bird that flew above you? Let me recount your lovers. Tammuz, the lover of your youth, for whom you have decreed endless lamentations. You loved the colorful little shepherd bird, only to break its wing, leaving it to cry out in the forest. You loved the mighty lion, yet dug 7 pits to trap him. You loved the noble stallion, only to burden him with the whip and lash, making him gallop tirelessly for hours and drink from muddied waters. You loved the shepherd, the master herder, who provided you with bread and sacrificed a kid daily, yet you turned him into a wolf, hunted by his own flocks and hounded by his dogs. You loved Ishulanu, the date gardener of your father, who offered you daily baskets of dates and brightened your table. But when you approached him with desires, he refused, only to be cursed and turned into a dwarf, trapped in his garden of labors. And now you come to me, seeking to ensnare me as you did them. Ishtar, furious and humiliated by Gilgamesh's rejection, ascended to the heavens in a rage. She went to her father, Anu, and cried out, then to her mother, Antu, weeping bitterly at the insult she had received from the king of Uruk. Tears streamed down her face as she cried out, Father, Gilgamesh has insulted me again and again. He has recounted my past lovers with despicable words and curses. Anu, addressing his daughter, replied, What troubles you? Was it not you who provoked King Gilgamesh? So he responded by recounting your deeds, however despicable they may be. But Ishtar was not deterred. She insisted, Father, grant me the bull of heaven so that I may send it down to kill Gilgamesh in Uruk. If you refuse, I will smash the gates of the netherworld, letting the dead rise to devour the living. The dead will outnumber the living. Anu, concerned about the consequences, warned her, If I give you the bull of heaven, it will bring 7 years of famine to Uruk. Have you made provisions for the people? Have you ensured there is enough grain and grass for the animals? Ishtar, relentless, assured her father, I have prepared grain in the granaries for the people, and I have grown grasses for the animals, ensuring they will not suffer during the 7 years of barren fields. Satisfied with her response, Anu handed Ishtar the nose rope of the bull of heaven. With this, Ishtar led the divine bull down to earth. As the bull of heaven descended upon Uruk, it approached the Euphrates. At its first snort, a massive pit opened up, swallowing 100 young men of Uruk. With its second snort, another pit opened, consuming 200 more. At its third snort, the ground split once again, and this time Enkidu fell into the pit up to his waist. Summoning all his strength, Enkidu leapt out and seized the bull by its horns. The beast retaliated, spewing spittle in front of him and thrashing its thick tail behind. Enkidu called out to Gilgamesh, "My friend, we must act boldly. Let us respond to this threat together. I will seize the bull by its tail while you make the killing blow. Between its nape and horns, thrust your sword with all your might." With Enkidu grappling the bull by its tail, Gilgamesh approached with the skill of an expert butcher. With precision, he thrust his sword between the nape and horns, striking the bull down. After they killed the bull of heaven, they tore out its heart and offered it to Shamash, bowing humbly before the sun god. The two companions then sat down together, catching their breath from the intense battle. Ishtar, filled with grief and fury, ascended to the top of the wall of Uruk Haven. She took on a posture of mourning and hurled a curse, "Woe unto Gilgamesh, who slandered me and killed the bull of heaven." Upon hearing Ishtar's lament, Enkidu, furious, tore off the bull's hindquarter and flung it in her face. "If I could get to you," he shouted, "I would do the same to you. I would drape the bull's innards over your arms." In response, Ishtar gathered the cultic women of the city, joy girls, harlots, and women with lovely locks, and set them to mourning over the hindquarter of the bull of heaven. Meanwhile, Gilgamesh summoned all the artisans and craftsmen of Uruk to admire the horns of the bull of heaven. Each horn was made from 30 minas of lapis lazuli, their casing 2 fingers thick. The horns held enough oil to fill 6 vats, which Gilgamesh offered as an ointment to his personal god, Lugalbanda. He then hung the horns in the bedroom of the family head, presumably in honor of Lugalbanda. Having washed their hands in the waters of the Euphrates, Gilgamesh and Enkidu walked hand in hand through the streets of Uruk. The people of the city gathered around, marveling at the heroic duo. Gilgamesh proclaimed to his palace retainers, "Who is the bravest of men? Who is the boldest of all? It is Gilgamesh, the bravest of men, the boldest of all." That night, Gilgamesh held a grand celebration in his palace. The young men of Uruk fell asleep on the couches, their spirits at ease. As Enkidu slept, he was visited by a dream. Awaking suddenly, he turned to Gilgamesh and began to reveal the disturbing vision that had come to him in the depths of the night. Enkidu, lying weak and sick before Gilgamesh, began to reveal a haunting dream he had experienced. "My friend," Enkidu said, his voice heavy with sorrow, "why are the great gods in conference? In my dream, Anu, Enlil, and Shamash gathered in council. Anu spoke first to Enlil, declaring, 'Because they killed the bull of heaven and also slew Humbaba, the one who uprooted the cedar of the mountain must die.' Enlil then decreed, 'Let Enkidu die, but Gilgamesh must not perish.' Enkidu continued, 'The sun god of heaven spoke in my defense, saying, Was it not at my command that they killed the bull of heaven and Humbaba? Should innocent Enkidu now be condemned to death?' But Enlil grew angry at Shamash and blamed him, saying, 'You are responsible, for you traveled daily with them as their companion.' Hearing this, Gilgamesh's eyes filled with tears, and they flowed like canals down his face. 'Oh brother, dear brother,' he cried, 'why do they absolve me but condemn you? I do not understand why they spare me and not you.' Enkidu, his strength fading, replied with anguish, 'So now I must become a ghost, to sit with the shades of the dead, never to see my dear brother again. In the cedar forest where the great gods dwell, I did not even kill the cedar.' Turning his sorrow into anger, Enkidu addressed the wooden door they had crafted from the cedar, speaking to it as if it were alive. 'You stupid wooden door, without understanding. At 10 leagues I selected the wood for you, until I found the tallest cedar. Your wood was unmatched, and I made you, carried you all the way to Nippur. You stood 72 cubits tall, 14 cubits wide, and 1 cubit thick. I fashioned you, brought you here myself. Had I known you would bring me such misfortune, I would have chopped you into pieces, lashed your planks, and left you scattered. Enkidu's anger and frustration poured out as he cursed the door he had crafted, his bitterness evident. May a king who comes after me reject you, and may the gods remove my name from you and replace it with another's. In his despair, he ripped at the door and threw it down. Gilgamesh, listening to Enkidu's words, was overwhelmed with grief. Tears streamed down his face as he spoke to his dying friend. My friend, you have always been wise, yet now your words are filled with bitterness. The dream you had is indeed important, but it is also terrifying. It brings fear and sorrow, not only to you but to all who live. I will pray to the great gods on your behalf, beseeching them to spare you. I will create a statue of you made of gold as a testament to our bond. But what Enlil has decreed cannot be undone. His words are final. The fate that has been set for mankind cannot be changed. As dawn broke, Enkidu raised his head toward the sky, tears flowing at the first light of the sun. He cried out to Shamash, pleading for his life. O Shamash, I appeal to you for my precious life. It was that trapper who brought me here, preventing me from achieving the same fate as my friend. May the trapper never have enough to eat. May his profits be diminished, and may his wages decrease. Let him not find peace, but vanish like vapor. After Enkidu had cursed the trapper to his satisfaction, he felt compelled to turn his anger toward Shamhat, the harlot who had brought him out of the wild. Come now, harlot, he declared. I will decree your fate, a fate that shall endure for eternity. I will curse you with a great curse. May you never build a household or know the love of a child. May you be excluded from the company of young women. May the dregs of beer stain your beautiful lap, and may a drunk soil your festive robes with vomit. May your dwelling be at the gateway, and the crossroads your home. May you sleep in wastelands, and the shadow of the city wall be your refuge. May thorns pierce your feet, and may both the drunk and the sober slap your face in the streets. Let owls nest in the cracks of your walls, and may no celebrations ever include you. Hearing Enkidu's words, Shamash, the sun god, called down to him from the sky. Enkidu, why do you curse Shamhat, the harlot? She fed you bread fit for a god, gave you wine fit for a king, clothed you in fine garments, and allowed you to make the noble Gilgamesh your comrade. Now, Gilgamesh is your beloved brother. He will lay you on a grand couch and place you at his left side, where princes will kiss your feet. The people of Uruk will mourn deeply for you, filling the city with woe. Gilgamesh will let his hair grow long in mourning and wear the skin of a lion as he roams the wilderness in grief. The words of Shamash calmed Enkidu's agitated heart, and his anger subsided. Realizing his error, he turned to Shamhat, saying, Come, Shamhat, let me bless you instead. May governors and nobles adore you. May distant men bite their lips in anticipation of you, and may soldiers not refuse you. May they give you gifts of rock crystal, lapis lazuli, and gold, as well as earrings of filigree. May you enter the presence of the gods, and may men abandon their wives for you. Enkidu, however, was not at peace. Lying alone, his insides churned with illness and despair. Turning to Gilgamesh, he began to recount a disturbing dream he had experienced. Listen, my friend, he said, I had a dream last night. The heavens cried out, and the earth responded. I stood between them when a dark figure appeared, a man whose face resembled the fearsome Anzu bird, with hands like lion's paws and nails like eagle's talons. He seized me by the hair, overpowering me. I struck back, but he moved as swiftly as a jump rope, then struck me, capsizing me like a raft and trampling me like a wild bull. He encircled my body in a clamp. I cried out to you, "Help me, my friend." But you did not rescue me. You were too afraid. Enkidu continued, his voice filled with dread. Then the dark figure turned me into a dove, and my arms became feathered like wings. He seized me and led me to the house of darkness, the dwelling of Irkala, the underworld where those who enter do not return. It is the road of no return, where the dead sit in darkness, their food is clay, and they wear feathered garments like birds. There is no light, only dust upon the door and bolt. As I entered this house of dust, I saw heaps of royal crowns, and the bearers of these crowns, who once ruled the land, now served Anu and Enlil. They prepared meals and poured water from waterskins. The high priests, purification priests, and the priests of the great gods all sat there, alongside Etana, Sumukan, and Ereshkigal, the queen of the netherworld. Beletseri, the scribe of the underworld, read a tablet before Ereshkigal. She lifted her head and saw me, asking, "Who has brought this man here?" At this, Enkidu's voice trailed off, the horror of the dream still palpable. He turned to Gilgamesh with a plea. "Remember me, my friend. Do not forget the trials we endured together." But as Enkidu's sickness worsened, he was confined to his bed. Days passed, 1, 2, 3, and more. By the 7th day, Enkidu's condition grew dire, and by the 10th day, he was nearing death. In his weakened state, he called out to Gilgamesh, his words filled with bitterness. "My friend, you once encouraged me in battle, yet now you have abandoned me in my suffering. I am alone, facing death, while you continue to live." As he moaned in agony, Gilgamesh, overcome with grief, was awakened. Gilgamesh's cries echoed like the mournful cooing of a dove. "May my friend not be taken by death," he begged. "I will mourn him, stay by his side, and honor him as the bravest of all men." As the first light of dawn broke, Gilgamesh turned to his fallen friend and began a heartfelt lament. "Enkidu, born of the wild, raised by the gazelle, and nursed by wild asses, you learned the grazing lands from the herds that sheltered you. May all the paths we walked together to the cedar forest mourn you, without ceasing, night or day. May the elders of Uruk-haven, the people who blessed us on our journey, and the men of the mountains and hills grieve your passing." He continued, invoking the elements and creatures of nature in his sorrow. "May the pastures wail for you as if they were your mother. May the cedars and cypress trees we cut in our rage weep for you. May the wild animals, the bear, hyena, panther, tiger, water buffalo, jackal, lion, wild bull, stag, and ibex all join in mourning for you. May the holy river Ulaja, where we once strolled grandly, grieve your loss, and may the pure Euphrates, where we poured libations, weep for you as well." Gilgamesh's grief encompassed all who had known Enkidu. May the warriors of Uruk, who witnessed our battles against the bull of heaven, mourn you. May the farmer who sang your name in his work song, the craftsman who admired your strength, and the herder who provided for you, all lament your loss. May the harlot who once anointed you with oil weep for you, and may even those who were strangers to you now feel sorrow. Let the brothers weep for you like sisters, and let the priests cut their hair in mourning." Turning to Enkidu's wild origins, Gilgamesh said, "Your mother and father, born in the wastelands, will wail for you. I mourn you deeply, my friend. I cry out like a mourner, for you were my axe at my side, my sword at my waist, my shield in battle, and my festive garment. An evil demon appeared and took you from me." Gilgamesh's grief grew more intense as he tried to rouse his friend. "Enkidu, my friend, you were like a swift mule, a fleet wild ass of the mountains, a panther of the wilderness. We joined forces, ascended the mountains, fought the bull of heaven, and conquered Humbaba in the cedar forest. But now, what is this sleep that has taken hold of you? You have turned dark and no longer hear my voice." He touched Enkidu's heart, finding it no longer beating. Overcome with sorrow, Gilgamesh covered his friend's face as tenderly as one would veil a bride. He bent over Enkidu's lifeless form like an eagle shielding its young, pacing around like a lioness deprived of her cubs. In his anguish, he sheared off his curls and cast them to the ground, ripping off his fine clothes in disgust and throwing them away as if they were abominable. Over the lifeless body of Enkidu, Gilgamesh wept bitterly, overcome by grief. Roaming the wilderness in despair, he cried out, "I am going to die. Am I not like Enkidu?" Deep sorrow pierced his heart, filling him with fear of his own mortality. Distraught, he resolved to seek out Utnapishtim, the son of Ubartutu, who was granted eternal life by the gods. Determined and filled with urgency, Gilgamesh set off on his journey. As he traversed the mountain passes, darkness fell, and Gilgamesh encountered lions along the path. Terrified, he raised his head in prayer to Sin, the moon god, and poured out his pleas to the great lady of the gods, seeking protection. "Save me from this terror," he implored. In the midst of the night, Gilgamesh was startled awake by a vivid dream. In the vision, he saw a warrior reveling in life, wielding an axe and drawing a dagger from its sheath. The warrior leaped into the midst of the lions like an arrow, scattering them. The details of this dream hinted at the dangerous path that lay ahead. The narrative then jumps forward, missing significant details of Gilgamesh's quest. The next intact part of the text finds Gilgamesh standing before Mount Mashu, the towering mountain that guards the rising and setting of the sun. The peak of Mashu reaches the dome of the heavens, while its base descends to the depths of the netherworld. At the gate stood the scorpion beings, guardians of the entrance. Their terrifying presence induced deathly fear. Their ominous aura stretched over the mountain. Seeing these fearsome creatures, Gilgamesh's face was blanketed with trembling terror, but he gathered his courage and drew near. The male scorpion being noticed him and spoke to his companion, the female scorpion being. "He who approaches us," he observed, "has the flesh of gods." The female scorpion being responded, "He is 2/3 God, 1/3 human." The male scorpion being then addressed Gilgamesh. "Why have you traveled such a distant journey? Why have you come to me crossing perilous rivers? What is it you seek?" Gilgamesh, composed yet resolute, replied, "I have come seeking my ancestor, Utnapishtim, who joined the assembly of the gods and was granted eternal life. I must ask him about death and life." The scorpion being listened to Gilgamesh's bold declaration and responded with solemnity. "No mortal man has ever crossed these mountains. For 12 leagues the darkness is impenetrable, dense, and without a trace of light. To the rising and setting of the sun, only the gods have ventured." Gilgamesh, determined and resolute, persisted in convincing the scorpion beings to let him pass. With unwavering resolve, he declared, "Even in sadness and pain, whether in the cold or heat, gasping for breath, I will not turn back. Open the gate and let me through." Moved by Gilgamesh's determination, the scorpion being finally relented. "Go on, Gilgamesh, fear not. I grant you passage through the Mashu Mountains. You may traverse the peaks and ranges safely. Let your feet carry you forward, for the gate is open to you." With the gate opened, Gilgamesh heeded the words of the scorpion being and stepped onto the road of the sun. As he entered the tunnel, darkness enveloped him. He journeyed 1 league, but the darkness was dense. There was no light, neither ahead nor behind him. 2 leagues passed, then 3, and still he was engulfed in blackness. 4 leagues in, he continued, unable to see what lay before or behind. By the 5th league, the darkness remained unbroken. Gilgamesh pressed on, undeterred. By the 6th and 7th leagues, there was still no light. He called out at the 8th league, but only darkness responded. The 9th league brought the bite of the north wind, which licked at his face, yet the darkness remained impenetrable. By the 10th league, Gilgamesh sensed he was nearing the end of the tunnel. At the 11th league, he emerged before the sunrise, and by the 12th league, light finally began to break through. The darkness gave way to brilliance, revealing a stunning sight. A garden filled with trees bearing lapis lazuli leaves and fruits that were a delight to behold. Although the full description of the garden is missing, the surviving lines hint at its wonder. The trees bore lapis lazuli, agate, and carnelian, with thorns resembling rubies and emeralds, each sparkling like treasures of the sea. Gilgamesh stood in awe, having emerged from the darkness into a world of shimmering beauty. By the seashore stood Siduri, the tavern keeper, with her pot stand and golden fermenting vat. Cloaked in a veil, she gazed off into the distance, noticing a figure approaching. It was Gilgamesh, wearing a rough skin, bearing the marks of godly heritage on his body, but also the deep weariness of grief and travel. His expression was forlorn, and he looked like one who had endured a long and arduous journey. As Siduri watched him approach, suspicion filled her mind. That man must be a murderer, she thought, alarmed by his wild and disheveled appearance. Fearing for her safety, she swiftly bolted the door and locked the gate. But Gilgamesh, hearing the commotion, lifted his head and spotted her. Determined, he called out, "Tavern keeper, why have you bolted your door? Why have you barred your gate and locked the bolt? Open up, or I will break your door and smash the lock." Siduri peered out cautiously, seeing the rugged man before her. Gilgamesh then proclaimed, "I am Gilgamesh. I killed the guardian of the cedar forest. I destroyed Humbaba, slew lions in the mountain passes, and wrestled the bull of heaven. I am the king of Uruk, seeking the secret of eternal life." Recognizing his identity, Siduri spoke to him. "If you are truly Gilgamesh, the one who accomplished such heroic feats, why do your cheeks look so sunken and your expression so desolate? Why is your heart filled with such wretchedness? Your features are haggard, and deep sadness rests within you. You appear like one who has traveled far, scorched by the heat and chilled by the cold. Why do you roam the wilderness alone?" With a heavy heart, Gilgamesh replied, "Should I not be haggard and filled with sorrow? Should my features not be worn, and my heart filled with despair? My friend Enkidu, who was like a wild ass in the wilderness, chased lions with me, battled beside me, and overcame all challenges. We killed the bull of heaven, destroyed Humbaba, and slew lions together. But now, Enkidu, whom I loved dearly, has succumbed to the fate of all humankind. For 6 days and 7 nights, I mourned over his body, refusing to let it be buried, until a maggot fell from his nose. The sight of his decay terrified me, filling me with the fear of death." Gilgamesh's voice grew more desperate. "The death of Enkidu weighs heavily upon me. How can I stay silent? How can I be still? He has turned to clay, and I fear that I will soon share the same fate. Will I, too, lie down, never to rise again?" Desperate to continue his quest for immortality, Gilgamesh asked, "So now, tavern keeper, tell me, what is the way to Utnapishtim? What are the markers along the path? If I can, I will cross the sea. If not, I will continue to wander through the wilderness." Siduri answered him with a solemn warning. "There has never been a safe passage across the sea, Gilgamesh. Since ancient times, only Shamash, the valiant sun god, has crossed it. The path is dangerous, and the waters of death lie in between. Even if you manage to cross the sea, how will you navigate the waters of death?" She then pointed toward the nearby woods. "Over there is Urshanabi, the ferryman of Utnapishtim. He tends to the stone things in the forest and is gathering mint. Go to him, let him see your face. If he agrees, he will help you cross. If not, you will have no choice but to turn back." When Gilgamesh heard the advice from Siduri, he made his way toward Urshanabi, the ferryman of Utnapishtim, determined to find a way to cross the sea. He crept stealthily through the woods, axe in hand, and spotted the stone things near the boat. Without hesitation, he struck at them, his blows echoing through the forest. Urshanabi, who had sharp eyes, heard the commotion and rushed toward the sound. He confronted Gilgamesh, but it was already too late. The stone things that enabled safe passage across the waters of death were destroyed. Stricken with disbelief, Urshanabi slapped his chest in frustration and looked upon the stranger before him. Seeing Gilgamesh's appearance, Urshanabi was struck by his desolate expression. "Why are your cheeks so hollow and your face so haggard?" he asked. "Why does deep sadness weigh upon you? You look like one who has endured a long and arduous journey, marked by searing heat and biting cold. Why do you wander the wilderness alone?" Gilgamesh, filled with grief and fatigue, replied, "Urshanabi, should I not appear this way? Should my heart not be filled with woe? My friend Enkidu, who once chased wild asses in the mountains and panthers in the wilderness, is no more. We fought together, defeating the bull of heaven, slaying Humbaba in the cedar forest, and confronting lions in the mountain passes. But Enkidu, my dearest friend, has succumbed to the fate of all mortals. For 6 days and 7 nights I mourned beside him, refusing to let him be buried, until the sight of a maggot emerging from his nose filled me with terror. I have roamed the wilderness ever since," he continued, "driven by the fear of death. The loss of Enkidu has left me haunted, unable to rest. How can I stay silent when my beloved friend has turned to clay? I too will share his fate. Am I not mortal, destined to lie down and never rise again?" Gilgamesh then asked urgently, "Now, Urshanabi, what is the way to Utnapishtim? Show me the path, for I must reach him. If I can cross the sea, I will do so. If not, I will wander endlessly." Urshanabi, however, had a grave response. "Gilgamesh, it is your own hands that have hindered the crossing. By destroying the stone things and removing their ropes, you have made the passage impossible. Without them, the boat cannot withstand the waters of death." But Urshanabi did not abandon hope. "If you still wish to proceed, there is a way," he explained. "Take your axe and go into the woods. Cut 300 punting poles, each 60 cubits in length, strip them and attach caps. Bring them to the boat, and perhaps we can still make the journey." With renewed determination, Gilgamesh took up his axe and dagger and set off into the woods. He worked tirelessly, cutting 300 punting poles, stripping them and fitting caps. He then returned to the boat, carrying the poles with him. Gilgamesh and Urshanabi boarded the Majilu boat and set sail. For 3 days, they traveled a distance that would have taken a month and a half on foot. Finally, they reached the ominous waters of death. Urshanabi cautioned Gilgamesh, "Hold back, take a punting pole, but be sure not to let your hand touch the waters of death." Gilgamesh obeyed, using one pole after another to push the boat forward. He thrust 12 punting poles into the water, one by one, carefully avoiding contact with the lethal waters. As they neared their destination, the poles were depleted. Gilgamesh improvised by removing his waistcloth, raising it as a makeshift sail. From afar, Utnapishtim, known as the Faraway, noticed the approaching boat. With furrowed brows, he was puzzled by what he saw. The absence of the stone things, the ferryman's shattered tools, and a stranger steering the boat. Utnapishtim could not recognize the traveler and wondered aloud, "Who is this that sails without the stone things? He is not one of my own, and I do not know him." When Gilgamesh finally stepped ashore, Utnapishtim, curious yet cautious, approached him. "Why do you look so desolate, Gilgamesh? Your cheeks are hollow, your heart is heavy, and your features are worn. What great sadness burdens you so deeply? You appear like one who has endured the harshest journey, scorched by heat, frozen by cold. What drives you to roam the wilderness in such a state?" Gilgamesh, exhausted and overwhelmed by grief, spoke with sorrow. "Utnapishtim, should I not look this way? Should my heart not be wretched, my features haggard, and my body worn from endless wandering? My friend Enkidu, the one who ran with the wild asses and fought beside me, is dead. We battled the bull of heaven together, slew Humbaba in the cedar forest, and braved lions in the mountains. But Enkidu, whom I loved dearly, has met the inevitable fate of mortals." Tears welled in Gilgamesh's eyes as he recounted his anguish. "For 6 days and 7 nights, I mourned over Enkidu's body, refusing to let it be buried until I saw a maggot crawl from his nose. The sight terrified me, filling me with fear of my own death. Now I roam the wilderness, haunted by the loss of my friend and the shadow of death that looms over us all. Am I not like Enkidu? Will I too turn to clay and never rise again?" Utnapishtim listened intently as Gilgamesh revealed the reason for his journey. "I seek you, Utnapishtim, whom they call the Faraway. I have traveled through mountains, crossed treacherous seas, and faced countless dangers to find you and learn the secret of eternal life. My journey has been filled with toil and sleepless nights, and I have clothed myself in the skins of the wild animals I hunted along the way." Utnapishtim, with wisdom born of his divine knowledge, responded gently, "Gilgamesh, why do you carry such sadness? You, who are part god and part man, have taken upon yourself a burden that no mortal can bear. Do you think the gods toil like men? No, they do not. They appointed death as the fate of humankind, but they did not reveal the day it would come." He continued, offering profound insights. "Death is a reality that none can escape, and its face is hidden from all. No one can hear its voice, nor see its approach, yet it claims all who live. For how long do we build homes, seal documents, share inheritances, or let jealousy flourish? The river's waters rise, only to carry away dragonflies. The sun that shines on life also casts shadows of death. Life and death were established by the Anunnaki, the great gods, and Mamatum, the weaver of destiny. They granted life, but kept the days of death a mystery. You, Gilgamesh, must understand that even kings cannot alter this decree." Utnapishtim's words resonated deeply with Gilgamesh, who now faced the ultimate truth of mortality, the inevitability of death, determined by the gods and hidden from human knowledge. The once mighty king of Uruk, who had sought to defy fate itself, now stood humbled before the wisdom of the one who had crossed into immortality. Gilgamesh stood before Utnapishtim, staring intently. He was surprised by what he saw. "I have been looking at you," he said, "but your appearance is not strange. You are like me. You are not different at all. I came prepared to confront you, yet here I am, with my arm at rest. Tell me, How did you join the assembly of the gods and find the secret of life?" Utnapishtim responded calmly, "Gilgamesh, I will reveal to you a mystery. I will tell you a secret of the gods." He began his tale describing the ancient city of Shuruppak, located along the banks of the Euphrates, a city so old that gods resided within it. The great gods decided to bring forth a devastating flood, moved by their hearts to cleanse the earth. Anu, the father of the gods, swore an oath of secrecy, with Enlil, Ninurta, and Ennugi as key advisors in this divine decision. Enki, the clever prince, was also bound by the oath, but chose to reveal the plan in secret. Speaking to the reed house, Enki whispered, reed house, wall, wall, O man of Shuruppak, son of Ubartutu, tear down your house and build a boat. Abandon wealth and save living beings. Forsake possessions and let life prevail. Make all living beings board the vessel. Let its dimensions be equal, its length matching its width. Roof it over, like the Apsu. Utnapishtim, hearing Enki's words, responded with obedience. My lord, he said to Enki, I will carry out your command, but what shall I say to the people and the elders of the city? Enki instructed him further. Tell them, Enlil has rejected me, and I cannot stay in your city, nor can I dwell on his land. I will descend to the Apsu to live with my lord Enki. Meanwhile, Enlil will shower abundance upon you, a profusion of fowl and fish and harvests of wealth. In the morning, loaves of bread will fall like rain, and in the evening, wheat will shower down upon you. At dawn, the people gathered around Utnapishtim, ready to help. Carpenters came with their hatchets, reed workers brought their tools, children carried pitch, and others brought whatever was needed. On the fifth day, Utnapishtim began constructing the boat. It was massive, a field in size, with walls towering 120 cubits high, perfectly square on all sides. He designed it with 6 decks, dividing it into 7 levels and further separating it into 9 compartments. He sealed the boat's midsection with watertight plugs and made provisions for punting poles. He poured 3 times 3,600 units of raw bitumen into the kiln, along with an equal amount of pitch. He also stored large quantities of oil, apart from what the workers consumed. To keep the workers motivated, he provided them with ale, beer, oil, and wine, allowing them to celebrate as if it were the New Year's festival. By sunset, the boat was complete, though launching it proved difficult. The workers had to maneuver a runway of poles back and forth until 2/3 of the vessel finally entered the water. All the living beings that I had, I loaded onto the boat. My family, the beasts, animals of the field, and craftsmen all came aboard. Shamash, the god of the sun, had given me a sign. In the morning, loaves of bread will fall from the sky, and in the evening, a rain of wheat. As the predicted moment arrived, the loaves fell in the morning, and the rain of wheat followed in the evening. I entered the boat and sealed its entry, giving the caulking duties to Puzuramuri, the boatman, as I handed over my palace and its contents to him. As dawn broke, a black cloud rose from the horizon. Within it, Adad, the storm god, thundered, accompanied by Sholat and Hanish, heralds of the storm, who swept over the land. Erigel tore loose the moorings, and Ninurta unleashed overflowing waters. The Anunnaki lifted their torches, setting the land ablaze with blinding flare. The heavens were stunned by Adad's wrath, and darkness engulfed the earth. The land shattered like a clay pot as the south wind howled fiercely, submerging mountains and overwhelming the people with a violent flood. No one could recognize another. The floodwaters blotted out all sight. Terrified, the gods ascended to Anu's heaven, cowering like dogs by the outer wall. Ishtar, mistress of the gods, shrieked like a woman in labor, lamenting, "The old days have turned to clay because of my decree. How could I command such evil in the assembly of the gods? I have brought my people to ruin." The Anunnaki wept alongside her, sitting humbly and sobbing, their lips parched with thirst. The flood raged for 6 days and 7 nights, flattening everything. On the 7th day, the storm subsided. The sea calmed, the whirlwind ceased, and silence fell over the land. Looking out, I saw that all humans had turned to clay. The land was leveled like a flat roof. I opened a vent in the boat, allowing fresh air to enter. Overcome with grief, I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face as I looked for land. At a distance of 12 leagues, a region of land emerged. The boat came to rest on Mount Nimush, which held it fast for 7 days, allowing no sway. On the 7th day, I released a dove to find land, but it returned, finding no perch. I sent out a swallow, but it too returned. Finally, I released a raven. It found the waters receding, and it did not return. I then freed all the living beings from the boat and made a sacrifice atop the mountain. I placed 7 and 7 cult vessels, filling them with offerings of reeds, cedar, and myrtle. The gods gathered eagerly, drawn to the sweet aroma like flies. Bele-Ili, Ninmah, the mother goddess, arrived and lifted the lapis lazuli necklace that Anu had given her, vowing, "As surely as I shall never forget this, I will always remember these days of the flood." But Enlil arrived enraged. He saw the boat and cried out, "How did anyone survive the annihilation? No man was meant to live." Ninurta, the warrior god, pointed to Enki, saying, "Who else but Enki could have conceived such a plan? He knows all the secrets of the gods." Enki, the clever prince, addressed Enlil. "You, the sage of the gods, how could you bring about such destruction? Charge the guilty and spare the innocent. Be compassionate and preserve life. Instead of a flood, you could have sent a lion, a wolf, or a famine to reduce humanity." Then Enlil entered the boat. He grasped my hand and lifted me up, bringing my wife to kneel beside me. He placed his hand upon our foreheads, blessing us. Utnapishtim was once human, but now let him and his wife be like the gods, to reside far away at the mouth of the rivers. With that, Utnapishtim and his wife were carried to the distant mouth of the rivers, a place of divine solitude and immortality. Utnapishtim then turned to Gilgamesh, speaking gravely. "Now then, who among the gods will aid you, that you might find the eternal life you seek? You must prove yourself. Stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights." But as soon as Gilgamesh sat down, exhaustion overwhelmed him, and sleep, like a dense fog, swept over him. Utnapishtim watched him and remarked to his wife, "Look there, the man, the youth who sought eternal life. Sleep has conquered him." Utnapishtim's wife, compassionate, urged, "Touch him, let the man awaken. Let him return safely by the way he came, to the gate from which he set out." But Utnapishtim, wary of mankind's nature, responded, "Mankind is deceptive and will deceive you. Come, bake loaves for him and set them by his head each day, marking the passage of time on the wall." So his wife baked loaves and placed them near Gilgamesh, marking each day. The first loaf dried up, the second grew stale, the third became moist, the fourth turned white, the fifth sprouted mold, while the 6th remained fresh. On the 7th day, Utnapishtim touched Gilgamesh, and the king awoke suddenly, confused. Gilgamesh, startled, exclaimed, "The very moment sleep overcame me, you touched me and woke me." Utnapishtim pointed to the loaves. "Look here, Gilgamesh, count your loaves. Each one marks a day you slept. The first loaf is desiccated, the second stale, the third moist, the fourth white, the fifth sprouting mold, and the sixth still fresh. You have slept for 6 days and 7 nights. Upon realizing his failure, Gilgamesh cried out in despair, "Oh woe! What shall I do, Utnapishtim? Where shall I go? The snatcher has taken hold of my flesh. Death dwells in my chamber, and wherever I set foot, there too is death." After hearing Gilgamesh's lament, Utnapishtim turned to Urshanabi, the ferryman, and angrily declared, "May the harbor reject you. May the ferry landing reject you. May you be denied its shores, you who once walked them. The man before you is covered in matted hair. Animal skins have marred his body. Take him to the washing place, Urshanabi. Let him wash away his filth and cleanse his matted hair with water like Elu. Cast away his animal skin and let the sea carry it off. Let his body be anointed with fine oil, his head wrapped in a fresh bandage, and let him wear royal robes, worthy of his status. Until he returns to his city, until he sets off on his journey, let his royal robe remain spotless and new." Urshanabi guided Gilgamesh to the washing place. There, Gilgamesh washed his matted hair, shed the animal skins that the sea carried away, anointed his body with oil, and wrapped his head in a new cloth. He put on the royal robe, and it remained unspotted as they prepared to leave. Gilgamesh and Urshanabi boarded the Megillu boat and set sail. As they departed, the wife of Utnapishtim spoke with compassion. "Gilgamesh came here exhausted and worn out. Is there nothing you can give him to return to his land with honor?" Moved by her words, Utnapishtim approached Gilgamesh and said, "Gilgamesh, you came here exhausted and worn out. I will reveal to you something hidden. There is a plant that grows like a boxthorn, whose thorns will prick your hands like a rose. If you obtain this plant, you will regain your youth." Gilgamesh eagerly listened, then dove into the Apsu, attaching heavy stones to his feet. He sank to the depths, grabbed the plant despite its thorns, and cut the stones loose, allowing the waves to cast him back to shore. Holding the plant in triumph, Gilgamesh told Urshanabi, "Urshanabi, this plant is the old man becomes a young man, a plant against decay. I will bring it to Uruk Haven and let an elder test it first. Then I will eat it myself and regain my youth." They resumed their journey, stopping for food after 20 leagues and resting for the night after 30 leagues. Upon discovering a cool spring, Gilgamesh bathed, but as he did, a snake detected the plant's scent, silently stole it, and in sloughing its skin, shed its old age. Seeing this, Gilgamesh sat down, overcome with grief, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Urshanabi, for whom have I toiled? For whom has my heart's blood roiled? I have done nothing good for myself, but have only helped the snake. The plant of youth is gone, carried away into the water, leaving me empty-handed." The journey back continued, following the same pattern, stopping for food and rest. When they finally arrived at Uruk, Gilgamesh spoke to Urshanabi. "Go up, Urshanabi, walk along the wall of Uruk, and observe its foundation. Inspect its kiln-fired brickwork thoroughly. Was it not laid out by the 7 sages themselves? It is 1 league city, 1 league palm gardens, 1 league lowlands, and 3 leagues encircling the temple of Ishtar. Behold, this is Uruk. And I, Gilgamesh, 2/3 divine, 1/3 human, am your king. And here, in this city, I shall remain until the shadows of destiny meet my days. Until that moment arrives, I will make my name upon this land, and through the sands of time, I shall enter history. Thus I, Gilgamesh, will become immortal." The traditional and widely accepted version ends here, with Gilgamesh's return to Uruk. However, years later, a new tablet was discovered. It became known as the 12th tablet of the Epic of Gilgamesh. While many experts disagree that this tablet is part of an official version of the epic, I consider it extremely important. This Akkadian text, introduced as the 12th tablet of the Epic of Gilgamesh, aligns with the concluding catchline of Tablet 11, serving as a bridge between Gilgamesh's quest for immortality and the mystical journey into the underworld to reclaim his lost artifacts. It is said that shortly after the creation of the universe, a tree appeared on the banks of the Euphrates River. Ishtar found this floating trunk and decided to plant it in her sacred garden in Uruk. Her intention was to eventually use its wood for crafting her bed and chair, symbolizing divine authority and comfort. However, Inanna's plans were disrupted when hostile forces, described as malevolent beings, began interfering with the growth of the tree. In need of assistance, Inanna called upon Gilgamesh, the heroic king of Uruk, to help her. Gilgamesh bravely confronted these beings, securing the tree's growth. In appreciation for his courage, Inanna crafted two magical objects from the tree: the puku, likely a powerful drum imbued with mystical properties, and the mika, a magical drumstick. These instruments, granted to Gilgamesh, were symbols of authority, strength, and perhaps even mystical connection to the divine realms. But one day, both the puku and the mika fell into the netherworld. Gilgamesh, deeply distressed by their loss, lamented, crying out repeatedly, "O my puku, O my mika!" His sorrow marked the beginning of what would be known as Tablet 12 in the Akkadian version of the epic, a continuation that depicts Gilgamesh's attempt to retrieve these cherished symbols from the realm of the dead. Gilgamesh, the mighty king, lamented the loss of the sacred drum and drumstick, which had mysteriously descended into the dark depths of the netherworld. The loss weighed heavily on him, for the drum was more than a mere instrument. It was a symbol of his bond with the gods and the divine order. With sorrow in his voice, Gilgamesh recalled a time of innocence. "That time when I verily had the drum in the carpenter's house, when the carpenter's wife was verily like my mother who bore me, and the carpenter's daughter was like my younger sister." His words carried the weight of a yearning that reached beyond the mortal realm. Desperately, he wondered aloud, "Lo, who will bring up the drum from the netherworld? Who will bring up the drumstick from the netherworld?" Enkidu, his loyal companion and brother-in-arms, approached. With unwavering resolve, he offered himself for the perilous task. "My lord, why criest thou, and why is so ill thy heart? Lo, I will bring up the drum from the netherworld. I will bring up the drumstick from the netherworld." Gilgamesh, sensing the dangers ahead, spoke solemnly to Enkidu, issuing a series of warnings to protect him from the sinister forces below. "If thou wilt go down to the netherworld, I will speak a word to thee. Take my word, heed well my admonitions." His words were filled with urgency, painting a grim picture of the underworld's laws. "Clean raiment thou shalt not put on, for as a sojourner they would mark thee. With sweet oil from the cruse thou shalt not anoint thee, for at its fragrance they would gather about thee. A throw stick into the nether world thou shalt not hurl, those struck would surround thee. A staff thou shalt not take in thy hand, for the spirits would tremble at thy presence. Sandals to thy feet thou shalt not fasten, lest a sound against the netherworld be made. Thy beloved wife thou shalt not kiss, thy hated wife thou shalt not strike. Thy beloved son thou shalt not kiss, thy hated son thou shalt not strike, for the wailing of the netherworld would seize thee." Yet Enkidu, driven by fierce loyalty and perhaps a touch of defiance, did not heed these warnings. He donned clean raiment, marking himself as an outsider. He anointed himself with fragrant oil, drawing the spirits to him. He hurled the throw stick, and those struck gathered around him. He took a staff in his hand, making the spirits tremble. He fastened sandals to his feet, his steps echoing through the dark realm. He kissed his beloved wife and struck the one he hated. He kissed his beloved son and struck the one he despised. Then came the wailing of the netherworld, a chilling cry that enveloped Enkidu. Emerging from the darkness was she who rests, the mother of Ninazu. Her presence was formidable, her form austere, her holy shoulders uncovered by raiment, her cruse-shaped breasts unwrapped by cloth. And in this moment, she denied Enkidu's return from the netherworld, her hold relentless and unyielding. Desperation filled Gilgamesh's heart as he realized the depths of Enkidu's fate. It was not Namtar, the god of fate, nor fever, the fierce affliction, that had claimed him. Instead, it was the netherworld itself, silent, dark, and unyielding, that had seized Enkidu. Not on the battlefield of men had Enkidu fallen, but within the depths of the underworld's dominion. Seeking aid, Gilgamesh journeyed alone to the towering Akur, the temple of Enlil, Lord of the Winds. He fell to his knees before the mighty god, his voice heavy with grief. Father Enlil, lo, my drum fell into the netherworld, my drumstick fell into the netherworld. Namtar did not seize him, fever did not seize him, the netherworld seized him. On the battlefield of men, he did not fall. The netherworld seized him. Yet Enlil remained unmoved. No favor was granted, no answer given. Gilgamesh then turned to beseeching Sin, the moon god. Father Sin, lo, my drum fell into the netherworld. My drumstick fell into the netherworld. Enkidu, whom I sent to bring them up, the netherworld seized. Namtar did not seize him. Fever did not seize him. The netherworld seized him. On the battlefield of men, he did not fall. The netherworld seized him. But Sin, too, did not intervene. Driven by undying hope, Gilgamesh journeyed to Eridu, the city of wisdom, and approached Enki, the god of waters and wisdom. His voice cracked with desperation as he pleaded, Father Enki, lo, my drum fell into the netherworld. My drumstick fell into the netherworld. Enkidu, whom I sent to bring them up, the netherworld seized. Namtar did not seize him, fever did not seize him, the netherworld seized him. On the battlefield of men, he did not fall. The netherworld seized him. This time, Enki listened and took pity on Gilgamesh. He turned to Nergal, the fearsome ruler of the underworld, and commanded, O valiant hero Nergal, open forthwith a hole in the earth, that the spirit of Enkidu may issue forth from the netherworld, that he may tell the ways of the netherworld to his brother. Nergal obeyed. As the earth trembled, a hole opened in the dark soil, and the spirit of Enkidu emerged like a puff of wind. He was pale, ethereal, and carried the weight of the other world upon him. In a moment of deep emotion, Gilgamesh and Enkidu embraced, their arms wrapped around each other, and tears welled up in their eyes. Tell me, my friend, Gilgamesh begged. Tell me the order of the netherworld which thou hast seen. But Enkidu hesitated, his spirit burdened by the horrors he had witnessed. I shall not tell thee, I shall not tell thee, but if I tell thee the order of the netherworld which I have seen, sit thou down and weep. Gilgamesh sat, his heart heavy, and prepared for the unthinkable. Enkidu's voice, filled with sorrow, recounted the grim reality. My body, which thou didst touch as thy heart rejoiced, vermin devour as though an old garment. My body, which thou didst touch as thy heart rejoiced, is filled with dust. Gilgamesh, overwhelmed by grief, threw himself into the dust, crying out, Woe! He wept with his face buried in the earth, consumed by the despair of his companion's fate. Then, with a voice marked by the burden of what he had witnessed, Enkidu answered Gilgamesh's questions one by one. "What have you seen?" asked Gilgamesh, his voice trembling. "I have seen the one who weeps over his fate," Enkidu began. "And what else have you seen?" "I have seen him who eats bread. He finds a brief moment of relief in his misery," Enkidu recounted, his voice heavy. "Have you seen him who drinks water? I have seen him. He quenches his spirit, if only for a fleeting moment." "And what of his heart?" Gilgamesh pressed. "I have seen his heart rejoice," Enkidu admitted, his tone reflecting both hope and despair. "Have you seen the scribe?" Gilgamesh continued. "I have seen him," Enkidu replied. "His arm is bared, ready for his duty, like that of a good scribe." There was a strange pride in his voice, a respect for the one who still fulfilled his task, even in the underworld. "What of the one who enters the palace?" "I have seen him," Enkidu confirmed. "He walks with dignity, like a beautiful standard raised high." Yet his words were cut short, the memory clouded by the broken echoes of a lost past, as several lines of his tale were lost to time. "Have you seen him who fell from the mast?" Gilgamesh asked with urgency. "I have seen him," Enkidu responded somberly. "Scarcely were the pegs pulled out. The image was one of unfinished business, a life taken too soon. And the one who died a sudden death, have you seen him?" "I have seen him," Enkidu acknowledged. "He lies upon the night couch, drinking pure water." "What of him who was killed in battle?" Gilgamesh's voice shook, the question touching a deeper wound. "I have seen him," Enkidu said, his voice faltering. "His father and mother raise his head in sorrow, and his wife weeps over him." "What of the one whose corpse was cast upon the steppe?" "I have seen him," Enkidu whispered. "His spirit finds no rest in the netherworld." The words were filled with a haunting sense of abandonment. "And him whose spirit has no one to tend to it, have you seen?" "I have seen him," Enkidu replied, the finality of his tone undeniable. "He eats lees of the pot, crumbs of bread, and offals of the street." Enkidu's voice grew weaker as he revealed the bleak truths of the underworld, where comfort was scarce, and the spirits of the neglected roamed restlessly. His words struck Gilgamesh deeply, the bitter reality of mortality setting in with a weight that even a king could not bear. And this is the complete story of the first literary text and the first mythological account humanity has ever known. A story of love and friendship, of heroism and triumph, a story of gods and men. A story hidden by the sands of time and now brought to light. This is the Epic of Gilgamesh.